Alrighty, thank you again for joining. And I'm just gonna start with some overview of what the session is going to be about. We will start with some introductions. We're gonna introduce the moderators, the panelists. Then we're gonna go over the housekeeping rules and how to participate during the session. We'll have a presentation from one of the panelists, and then we're going to go ahead and start a discussion. So I'll start with myself. My name is Mariana. I work for the Parking and Policy team, and I'll be moderating this session. Over to you, Sarah.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sarah Slade. I'm the Project Support Officer for Parking Policy. And I would just like to introduce our moderators who will be in the chat today answering your questions. Their names are Eloise Grimes, Mark Collins, and Elliot Smith.
Thank you, Sarah. Now we're going to go ahead and introduce the panelists. Over to you, Gosika.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gosika Anachibi. I'm the Parking and Policy Programme Manager.
Thank you, Michael.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Ben. I'm the Deputy Head of Parking. So nice to meet you all.
Thank you so much. And what we're going to do now is we're gonna explain a little bit about the housekeeping rules as well as how to participate during this session. Sarah?
Okay, so obviously we want everybody to be able to participate today and have their say. So I'd just like to remind you just to please be respectful in the language that you use. And I'll just take you now through the different functions of how you can participate today. So if you look at the bottom of the screen, there's a hand symbol and it says raise hand. So if you'd like to verbally ask a question to one of our panelists, please click on that button and we'll be able to unmute you and you can ask your question. There's also a chat function. And as I mentioned earlier, some of our team are in the chat function. So if you have a question, they should be able to answer it in there. Also, if you would like to write a question or type it directly for one of our panelists to answer, you can put that in the Q&A section at the bottom. There's 2 speech bubbles and that's where you can type your question. And then also throughout the session, if we have time, we might have some polls, which will just give us a little bit more information to find out who's with us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sarah. So what we're doing now is we're gonna have a presentation of the proposals for the parking and enforcement plan, and we'll have one of our panelists, Gosika, present to you. So over to you, Gosika.
Thank you, Mariana. Just one moment while I set up the presentation for you.
Thank you.
Lovely. So just to confirm, everyone can see this?
Yes.
Lovely. Okay, so as I aforementioned, my name is Gosika Anachibi. I'm the Policy and Programme Manager for Parking Services, and I'm going to take you through the proposals for the Parking and Enforcement Plan. So what is a Parking Enforcement Plan? Who does it affect? The Parking Enforcement Plan is a principal document which is for parking services, and it describes the plans and visions that the service will do over the next 5 years. It outlines a set of objectives and recommendations which we hope to achieve and work towards, and it also proposes how we intend to do it. This document affects anyone that lives, works, visits or parks within Hackney. In the beginning of the lockdown, there were fewer motor vehicles travelling on our roads, and therefore we realised that this behavioural change would benefit most of us because more people opted for sustainable modes of transportation or stayed at home because they were working from home. The council was then working to extend this change by rebuilding a greener Hackney. And to do this, we want to avoid a car-led recovery that would put the lives of Hackney people at risk in a negative way or impact them. Our vision and our direction of these policies are set out within this PEP, and it's to make the goal of cleaner, breathable air achievable, and it's built around 5 key visions. These are supporting the creation of sustainable streets for everyone by prioritising more of our curbside space to support greening in the borough and sustainable transport. Number 2, to provide high-quality customer-focused services that respond to the needs of our residents, businesses and visitors. Number 3 is to encourage motorists to choose active travel and sustainable travel options, or switch to cleaner vehicles with reduction in private vehicle ownership. Number 4 is consolidate a fair, proportionate and transparent enforcement service to deliver high levels of compliance and robustly tackle fraud. Number 5 is a consistent approach to parking products and services on all Hackney managed estates. So how are we doing this? Through the PEP, this whole consultation period, it's been going for the last 13 weeks. Well, it will last for, 13 weeks. And it's due to end on Monday, the 15th of November. We are holding multiple drop-in sessions for the public to ask public parking service manager questions, and also various show and tells throughout the consultation period. The public can also submit questions to parking managers, and it will be answered in a video recording session that will be posted online. So the key proposals of the parking enforcement plan: the hierarchy of parking needs. Now, what this does, it helps us to prioritise how we distribute the road space and to which user that is given to. At the top of our hierarchy of needs is number 1 priority, which is our blue badge holders. We've always had the hierarchy of parking needs, but we've changed it this year by adding additional entries, which are the ultra low emissions vehicle parking. So people with electric vehicles has been added. Car clubs have been given a higher priority. Residents have always been in the hierarchy of parking needs. We've also added public sector organisations, local businesses, service operational parking, short stay shoppers, visitor parking. They're all at the bottom because we do not prioritise these elements over residents and others that I've just mentioned. Other factors that affect priority include the impact of traffic flow, road safety, impact of air quality, climate change, the size of the vehicle, and that vehicle size, which in terms of how it affects the local environment as well, is also considered. So something new to the parking enforcement plan is the hierarchy of curbside space, and it basically looks at how we then use that space and what priority we give it to. So priority 1 is essential curbside space, and this aligns with personalised permit bays, which are for disabled residents, registered disabled bays, general use disabled bays, electric parking bays, floating car clubs, dedicated car club bays, and doctors' bays. Priority 2 is sustainable curbside space, and this looks at things like cycle hangers, cycle racks, cycle hire, other alternative ways in which we can use the space on the curbsides. It also includes Hackney housing estates. And priority 3 is probably what you know more about, which is things like the resident bay, permit bay, loading bays, business bays, motorcycle bays, the things that you would tend to see on the street. So this is new to the parking enforcement plan. If you're a Hackney resident, we are putting forward things like a free electric parking permit, which will just give anyone with an electric vehicle a free permit. Demand-led enforcement, which just basically focuses on where the issues are in terms of compliance and gives more resources to that area. Free e-Roma permit scheme, which is free for electric vehicles only between the hours of 10 to 3. We are reviewing charging bands to increase them from 5 to 13 to give people who then choose more sustainable vehicles more discount. We're introducing a diesel surcharge on a yearly increase, and this is just to set it out. So in previous years, we've just put the diesel charge, so we've basically proposed a diesel surcharge year on year, but we've not actually outlined how in the next few years what our plans are going to be. And in this PEP, we've decided that we want to show people that this is our plan, and basically give the opportunity for people to make those changes now while they're still on the forecourt making changes to their vehicles. Additional vehicle household surcharge. So if you've got more than one vehicle in a household, there will be additional surcharge. A car sharing permit for 2 parking zones, and that's for 2 vehicles in different in different parking zones, with 2 people being able to share it. And that's something that we've listened to our residents and businesses about in the past, where they've asked for this and we've not been able to provide it, but now we are putting that forward as a proposal in this parking enforcement plan. We're supporting electric vehicle charging point infrastructures across the borough through pilot schemes, car club bays, and we're also developing the parking policy to support that. we are looking to reduce the use of visitor vouchers by increasing the price for the more you buy, and also have variable zone limits. Just on the last point, if the majority of our residents only buy and use visitor vouchers for their family and friends, and those residents will not be affected by these proposals because it's only those that are using to the top end of the scale, which would mean, using vouchers to park on a daily basis would be affected by these proposals. So if you're a blue badge holder, we are allowing blue badge holders to park in permit bays across the borough. We're doing IT developments to support blue badge checks to ensure that only the people that should be using the blue badges are using them. We are reviewing the companion e-badge scheme to make sure it's fit for purpose, and also supports any amendments to the blue badge that we're going to be introducing. We're also securing parking for accessible and cargo bikes. So we've noticed that there is a gap in terms of parking for residents, businesses or visitors to the borough that might have cargo bikes to secure them safely, that they're not on the pedestrian walkway, that they are in a parking space. So those are the things that we're going to be looking to introduce across the borough as part of these proposals. So if you live on a Hackney Council estate, emissions-based charging over a 5-year transitionary period will be introduced. The diesel surcharge will be introduced as well. We're also thinking of bringing in 3- and 6-month permits. At the moment on estates, you can only get a 12-month permit, but if you're only there temporarily while you're looking for another place, then you will be able to, hopefully in the new proposals, if they're approved, apply for a 3- and 6-month permit. And short stay parking on estates, that's not available at the moment, but that's something that we're thinking of introducing alongside these proposals. And it will just be introduced to those estates that have the space, not the ones that are suffering from parking stress because they've got limited space as it is at the moment. An additional vehicle surcharge, similar to the one I introduced on streets, will be introduced on estates. So if you live on a council estate, there are other proposals that we're looking into, and that's just the extension of permits that we currently have. The community support permit, which we're hoping will replace the health and social care permit for people that are providing service to our residents in their homes, such as midwives and stuff and so on. Film vouchers, only again, we will introduce this on estates if there is a space to do so and there isn't parking stress. Dispensation waivers. At the moment, dispensation waivers, you can buy them when you're doing certain things around your property. But the things like we offer 2 free dispensation waivers for weddings and 10 free dispensations for funerals if you live on street properties, and that's something that we'd like to mirror on an estate. Business permits, again, only where there is the space to do so. Other key proposals for estates include conducting an audit on parking estates to make sure it's fit for purpose, aligning on-street and estate parking voucher prices and allocation over a 5-year period, and supporting sustainable travel options on Hackney housing estates, so electric charging and things like that, cycle hangers, making sure there's enough of that on our estates so that we're bringing estate properties in line with our on-street properties. If you work or commute in the borough, we're looking to do a 100% transition towards cashless parking where that is feasible. 50p per hour short stay parking for all electric vehicles, a review of observation periods just to make sure again that they're fit for purpose, market trader permits, looking to introduce that to support our market traders who trade in our established markets that are run by the council, community support permit introduction, what I mentioned earlier about the health and social care permit and people providing support to our residents in their homes, and differential pricing structure for short stay parking based on location and emissions. So depending on where you park in the borough, there'll be different prices and depending on what vehicle you have as well. We're looking to introduce maximum stays for car parks and electric vehicle charging points. Car parks because we don't want to encourage all day commuting, and electric vehicle charging points to encourage people to move once they've charged so other people can use that space to charge their vehicle. That brings me to the end of the presentation. There are ways in which you can get involved, and one of them is to visit us online and complete a consultation questionnaire. There's also the booklet online, so you can get more information on everything I've discussed today. You can email us at parking.policy@hackney.gov.uk. You can call us on 0208 356 4008, or you can also join another drop-in session. We've got a few more that are coming up, and to get that information, it's online as well. One of the people that's in the chat will post that for you, those details, so that you'll be able to click on those links, and you'll be able to take part. I'll pass you back to Mariana. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kosika, for the presentation. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead with the discussion. So like Sarah was explaining earlier, you have three ways of discussing with us. You can either raise your hand if you want to ask a verbal question. You can type your question in the Q&A function, or you can also type your question on the chat. So I see I have someone that has raised their hands. Anthony, I'm just going to unmute you so that you can ask your question. You are unmuted, so go ahead, Anthony.
Hi, hello, this is Tony Coombs here. Can you hear me speaking okay?
Yes, we can.
Great, lovely. Thanks very much, first of all, for the opportunity to do one of these drop-in sessions. It's very helpful, and thank you for the presentation too. I haven't done the consultation yet, but I will follow the link and actually do that because it's obviously useful for you to have the feedback. I live in a 4th floor rented flat. I have a petrol car, which parks with a permit on the street where I can find a space. I'd love to move to an electric car, but I've got 2 reservations. I mean, I can see that the direction of policy is very much towards moving people in that direction, which I think is very much the right thing. I would love to move to an electric car. They're pretty expensive things to buy at the moment. The cost will come down over the next few years, I hope. I've got 2 big reservations, though, about having an electric car here. There's nothing like, first of all, there's nothing like enough electric charging points. I mean, there's really very few electric charging points, and I'd be constantly worried I couldn't get one when I needed some charge in the car. That's one point. The other point is over the last 2 years, a lot of roads have been closed. And it's got to the point where the roads that are still open are now quite congested. You often get standing traffic. It doesn't seem to me that the number of cars is reducing very much. You just get more congestion on those roads. My second reservation is there's going to be a lot more road closures happening, and it's just going to make moving by car so incredibly difficult for me or for anybody else who actually needs a car to be able to move with. So those 2 points really, one about the electric charging points and one about future policy on road closures.
Thank you so much, Anthony. And I'm just going to allow the panelists to go ahead and answer your questions.
Hi, Tony. Thanks very much for your questions, which I think are 2 very valid ones, and I know that there are areas that others have got concerns on. In terms of electric charging infrastructure, Hackney has got over 100 charging points currently in place, and we are currently working to try and find a supplier to help us to increase the number of charging points we can install across Hackney significantly. Because obviously, we recognise we're on the cusp of a transition in terms of the standard fuel that vehicles will be using. Obviously, electric is very much the future, with the government's proposals to end the sale of combustion engine vehicles from 2030. So we've got a big programme of work led on by our street scene department that over the next few years will be rolling out a lot more chargers. I think it's somewhere in the region of 2,000 has been mooted, which will mean that it will be much more convenient for residents who want to make the shift to electric to be able to do so. I think in terms of how we look to program them in, one of the things we'll be looking at is how we can take information from residents like yourself who are potentially interested in making the shift to electric, and how we can help either identify charging points close to you or to look to try and secure electric charging in your area to help you to make that transition. I know that's an area that's being looked at by our street scene colleagues. And then in terms of the affordability question, you're right that obviously the straight costs at the moment are fairly expensive. They are coming down. There's analysis that's been done in the last 12, 18 months that's actually found the whole life cost of electric vehicles is now on a par with conventionally fueled vehicles, because obviously the cost of fueling vehicles, particularly with petrol prices the way they are at the moment, means that after the initial cost outlay has been addressed, they become much, much cheaper to run in the long run. And indeed, electric charging vehicles and hybrid also, to an extent, have now been on the market for such a period of time that actually the second-hand market is also growing rapidly. I was on Auto Trader yesterday, and there are examples of Nissan Leaf vehicles which are now available second-hand from £2,000 to £7,000. So it's still not an inconsiderable sum of money, but there are definitely opportunities available for people who do want to try and make the shift. In relation to the road closures that you were talking about, obviously, one of the challenges that Hackney has got, and our consultation, I should be clear on, is only looking at the parking aspects of what we manage in Hackney. There are separate consultations going on across Hackney in relation to low traffic neighbourhoods and school streets, and I'm sure that my colleagues on this call will be able to put the links to where you can give your feedback on those within the chat. But I think, you know, on a broader level, we do have a challenge, which is 40% of vehicle movements going through Hackney neither start nor end within the borough. And with the growth of satellite navigation systems on people's mobile phones and within cars, we've found that a huge amount of vehicles that should be on networked roads as they were previously have been obviously trying to travel across the borough through our residential streets, and it's something that, you know, councillors within the borough are very, very keen to address. And the low traffic neighbourhoods has been having a demonstrable impact in reducing the level of vehicles that are travelling through residential streets, and as a result making it safer and less polluted for people to be able to take forms of sustainable transport, whether it be walking or cycling, within those particular areas. So I would ask you and anyone else who's on today's conversation to take part in the consultations that are available. I can see that Elliot's just posted the details of the link that would allow you to take part in consultations for any low traffic neighbourhoods or school streets in your area. So please, if you've got feedback to give, please do so.
Thank you very much. All right, so we have another question by Kylie. Anthony, if you want to ask a follow-up question, I will allow you to ask after I just go through the other participants that want to ask questions. So you can just keep your hand raised, but I'm gonna mute you right now and just allow Kylie to ask her question. All right, so Kylie. I think you're muted.
Yep. You can hear me now? Yes,
Yes.
Great. Thank you. And thank you also for the presentation. I actually come from a slightly different viewpoint from Tony. So I've got actually quite a few questions, so bear with me as I go through what I want to say. So I definitely support the shift to electric vehicles. I think they will reduce exhaust emissions, but they also have other serious impacts. They still create road danger, as well as congestion and pollution from tyre and brake wear. And they are still high carbon compared to other modes like buses. And they also use up valuable public space for parking. And I think we actually need to avoid the negative impacts, and therefore it's crucial to make EV parking costs fair. And I do not believe that zero cost is fair. EVs are already cheaper to run because they don't attract petrol duty. And I cannot understand a zero cost electric vehicle policy which encourages their use and ownership when this is actually contrary to Hackney Council's transport strategy movement hierarchy and the reallocation of road space. So how is this policy seeking to address an encouragement and an increase in car ownership? How will the council start charging at what point from a no cost to some form of cost, and how is that really going to be shown to benefit people who've bought EVs? I just don't understand how the policy can start from zero, especially when bike parking is going to be more expensive than parking an electric vehicle. they take up 1/6 of the space, and yet they'll be cost more per year in biking charges. And I think actually bike parking should be the base for all parking charges, not electric vehicles. I also have other questions. What is the total reduction in on-street and estate car parking that the council seeks to achieve in the next 5 to 10 years? So how much car parking are you taking from the street so it can be used for other purposes, such as bike parking, parklets, community spaces, car clubs, things like that? And what is the intention, or how many bike hanger spaces in the next 5 to 10 years are you intending to put in? And also just another point that I've noted from the plan, by 2026, a year's permit for an average new petrol car is going to cost less than bike storage. It's going to cost less. It is £40 for a new petrol car in 2026, and it will be £42.50 for bike hire, for bike storage. And I just cannot understand how you are promoting car storage over a mode of transport which is far better, taking up far less room, bikes, I'm meaning, and better for our community. So those are my points I'd like addressed, please.
Thank you so much, Kylie. And I'm just gonna let the panelists answer your question. So thank you.
Hi, Kylie. Thanks very much for your questions. I'm happy to do my best to answer your points. I think in terms of the permit prices that we've set out within the proposals, what we've tried to recognise from the data we've looked at from the last 5 years is that by having, as Hackney is one of the earliest adopters of an emissions-based charging model for permit prices, and we've had charges ranging from free permits for electric vehicles up to £264 for most polluting vehicles for the last 5 years. And it has had an impact in helping to make people think about, for those that want to or need to drive a vehicle, to ensure that the efficiency of that vehicle is a consideration when they're looking to make a choice. But we recognise that the change that we've seen in terms of reductions, particularly at the higher end of the polluting, the higher end of pollution from vehicles, is not shifting down as quickly as we'd like to see, which is why the proposals we've set out within the paper see in effect a sharper increase in permit prices for medium to high polluting vehicles to really disincentivise the ongoing ownership of those vehicles within Hackney, and ensuring that people who want to make a greener choice are encouraged to do so through lower permit prices to help people to go as green as they possibly can in their vehicle choice. In respect of bike parking, actually Parking Services took over the management of bike parking back in 2019, and since then we've grown the scheme from having only 350 cycle hangers across the borough to nearly 600, and we've got another 40 being rolled out this winter. It's been a self-funding scheme with money coming in from various different sustainable transport pots to grow it, but we've still got a huge amount of demand for further cycle parking. It's part of the reason why, as Goska touched on earlier on, we are introducing a hierarchy of curbside space usage to really ensure that we are prioritising the use of curb space for cycle parking and other sustainable transport infrastructure to really start to transition away from, I think, what's historically always been the case, that roads and curb space is there to enable people to park private vehicles exclusively. And we recognise that we've got about 7 in 10 households don't own a car at all, and we need to ensure that the curb space that we have in the borough and its uses better reflect, the needs of everyone who lives on our streets, and not just those who happen to benefit from being able to own a car. So we will continue to grow the cycle hanger service. It's one that's very valued. The challenge in terms of pricing is one that we need to ensure that we've got enough income being generated from it to enable us to continue to grow the scheme further. And there are also some challenges around the pricing of it and ensuring that we don't have unoccupied spaces where in effect people are using those cycle hangers as in effect storage to get bikes out of their homes, and that they're actually using that on a regular basis. And so there's an element of demand management within there, but it's something we're hugely committed to and we will be looking to grow over the course of the next few years.
Thank you so much, Michael. Kylie, I'm going to allow someone else ask a question, but if you have any further questions and follow-up questions, just raise your hand again and I will allow you to ask your question after I've just allowed other participants. Thank you. So we have Tom. Tom, what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to unmute you so that you can go ahead and ask your question. Tom, I think I have unmuted you, so you can just go ahead and ask it.
Thanks, Mariana. Can you hear me all right? Good,
Yes.
good. First of all, thanks for this opportunity. I'm really sorry that I missed the presentation. I had a previous work commitment, so I only arrived just as it was ending. I filled out the consultation, but I didn't see anything on this particular query, so correct me if I'm wrong. So my query is whether or not there's a process for sort of resident-led parking removal of parking spaces. So, for example, myself and some sort of residents on my street have identified a spot where it's not immediately outside anyone's homes, it doesn't lead anywhere. We think it would be far better used if the parking was suspended there and it was turned into something else, like the sorts of things that you've been talking about just now: parklets, bike storage, outdoor gyms, whatever. That would be a sort of resident-led conclusion, I suppose. And so, although these sorts of long-term changes probably, they take time and money to reach, what we'd be really interested in is opportunities for short-term suspension of parking, so that we could maybe, as a community, start to use that space in different ways to demonstrate what the alternatives to parking provision might look like. So I know that in some parts of the community, people are really interested in the potential for gardening and greening this particular area. So yeah, so what I'm really interested in is, are there opportunities to sort of undertake, or to demonstrate an interest in, and to sort of rapidly implement these sorts of changes as a resident-led group, that doesn't take years and years and years of going through, long-term council. No offence, you do a great job, but that something that we can do quickly that has a positive effect over the short term. Might be ambitious, but short to medium term. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tom, for your question, and I'm just going to allow the panelists to answer.
Hi, Tom. Thank you very much for your feedback and your question. It's a really good suggestion, to be honest, and one that we would need to consider as part of the parking enforcement plan. And I'm glad that you've said that you've filled out the consultation and you've joined us here today to basically let us know of this proposal. In terms of what we do currently, when there are areas in the borough that are in need of a review, our parking operations team will come up with plans to review the spaces in terms of the parking zone itself. And as part of that, they might introduce things like electric charging points, or even if there was a suggestion for a parklet, that might be something that they might consider. So that is definitely something that I'll take back to that team to say, look, there are areas where residents want to lead and say, this is something that we would like to have as part of that design, or in that process. That's a good opportunity to also give that feedback as well. So I would definitely, as part of this process, the feedback you've given us today, we would definitely put that forward as something that we would consider in terms of all the other feedback, and just making sure that it just fits into the general direction of the parking enforcement plan. So thank you very much for that. In terms of short stay, like something you can do in terms of a short stay process, suspensions are there for different reasons, and I'd have to go back and just double check what are those reasons that we can suspend for. And I can do that and come back to you within this consultation period, unless Michael, Ben, you have the answer to that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd just say, you know, it's something that Hackney Council is really supportive of, helping communities to really, you know, play a really active role in helping to understand what they want to use curb space for. And the Parklets programme we've had in place now for a number of years is, I think, absolutely the right vehicle for the sort of thing you're describing, Tom. So I'm just going to put in the chat the link to the Parklets scheme. So in effect, and I'm just reading off our website here, the community parklets provide opportunities for the community to repurpose parking space on the street where you live for community uses other than storing cars. These can include planters, benches, games, notice boards, or anything else that your creativity and inventiveness can come up with. So that feels to similar to what I think you were describing, Tom, in terms of having a community-led approach to how we use this space for a period of time to see how well it works before perhaps looking at a longer term change in use of that curb space. So I'd encourage you to have a look at the Parklets scheme. Look, there's some really good information there in terms of FAQs on how to go about applying for it and how quickly that can be moved forward. So I'd encourage you to take a look at that if you haven't done so already.
Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you very much, Tom, for that suggestion. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mute you again. If you have another question, another suggestion, please raise your hand and I will allow you to ask questions. I'm going to go ahead and there's a few questions we have in the Q&A function. So I'm going to go over to Sarah for her to address them. And then we're going to keep going with some of the participants that have raised their hands. So over to you, Sarah.
Yeah, we just have a comment from Kylie that was in the chat, and she said that the Hackney Parklet scheme is currently suspended, and when will it be reopened for these community initiatives?
Okay, so I think the last round of Parklets applications, which is run by the Hackney Council Street Scene Department, obviously was concluded, I think, last year. I don't have the details of when they're looking to reopen that again. I think there's a review process looking at how well the last round of Parklets has operated and to try and apply some of the learnings to make it a more straightforward process for those who apply in future. So there'll be further information, I'm sure, on our Twitter and also on our website in relation to that, but we don't have a date.
Thank you so much, Michael. So I have Min. Min wants to ask a question, so I'm just gonna unmute Min, and then we're going to go with Anthony, then Leslie, and then Damien. So Min, I have unmute you. I think you just need to unmute yourself so that you can ask.
Hello everyone, can you hear me? Thank you for organising this session. I did attend the town hall one, but it all got a bit out of hand, so I don't think the presentation was even finished. But there's a couple of things I'd like to ask. There's how will the Hackney support residents who cannot cycle and cannot walk? You might say take the bus, but even the buses cannot seem to handle equipment that the elderly might have, like walkers, and our communities are not always helpful with allowing people to sit down who have obvious sort of mobility issues and whatever. If you want to cut back on cars, there's got to be alternative solutions in place for people with mobility issues. And two, Gossika, I think you said there was a focus group that you would give me details of. I've not had that, but I would like to understand if the anomaly to the companion badge scheme, which doesn't allow use of companion badge on estates in general use disabled bays. So you can use a companion badge in your T zone, in your zone, but you cannot on your estates. And I'd like to see that anomaly addressed. So how do I get involved with that? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Min.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Good, thank you. I was trying to reach you actually, but not able to, but hopefully we can catch up.
Brilliant. So in response to your question, for residents that cannot cycle, walk, or might have any sort of disability, obviously, you know that we do have the blue badge and the companion badge there for those residents. We're not saying that, you know, for people that need to drive, you know, we're saying that if you do need to drive, it should be as more sustainable as possible. So it's looking at the low emission vehicles, and it's also looking to the electric vehicles. And for those that, you know, don't need to drive, it's going to alternative modes such as cycling, walking, or taking public transport. But we do recognise there's going to be a portion of our residents, visitors and businesses to the borough, who basically need to drive for work purposes, from a disability perspective, and for those residents, it's just being as sustainable as possible in the choices that they make. In terms of parking on estates with companion badge, companion badges on estates are non-existent. We've never had the opportunity for residents who live on estates to have companion badge, because there were two separate entities only up until this month. Earlier on this month, Parking Services took over the management of estate parking. So companion badges are for on street, and if you have a disability and live on an estate, then you would have an estate resident permit, which would be free for you. Bringing those two entities together is something that we would definitely look at as part of this parking enforcement plan, but it all depends on what the feedback comes back on in regards to that, and also the different estates and the spaces and everything else that we've got. It's really important to protect the spaces that we've got on the estates for people that actually do live on those estates, and that's another thing that we also need to take into consideration, because if you was to open up the companion badge and allow people that have a companion badge who don't live on the estate the opportunity to park on the estate with that companion badge, you might find that the people that do live on there may not have the opportunity to park outside of their home. So it's trying to find the balance for not just the residents who live on estates, but who have disabilities, trying to find that balance. That's what we're trying to do.
Currently, anyone with a blue badge can park in a general use disabled bay on an estate. So it's just extending it to those bays. The resident bays should remain for residents, as you say, because they're limited, and it is there to enable people who live on estates to park outside their homes. But there is an anomaly with the general use disabled bays. So any general blue badge holder currently cannot park in an estate bay, but they can park in a general use disabled bay. And it's just extending the companion badge to be able to park on that. And I think it's just an anomaly. I think when we spoke, you said it was an anomaly, really. And it never used to be enforced, and now it is being enforced. So I've lived in Hackney for 44 years and on this estate for most of those. And when the companion badge was introduced, it was taken as being valid on estates prior. But it just means that a disabled person cannot actually park outside their home with their companion badge in the blue badge unless they put their blue badge up, which is open to theft.
Okay, so what I will say
to
that is that if you do live on an estate, you can get a free estate resident permit, which will allow you to park in more bays than that disabled bay, because on estate you have limited disabled bays, where the free resident permit for people who live on estates is where you can leave your vehicle on your estate and not have to leave your blue badge in the place of that. So that is open to you, and that will allow you to be able to park outside your home and not need to leave your blue badge in its place.
There's two issues with that. One, the estate bays are slim, not as spaced out as the disabled bays, so you can't unload your equipment as easily. And two, in doing that, you're leaving a general use disabled bay open, taking up a space that another resident could park in. So I would just, as I said, I think you said there was a focus group. How do I get involved in that? Or who I can write to you rather than take up time on this meeting.
We'll take your details. I'll get one of my team to give you a call, and we'll take your details and we'll talk to you about that separately. But thank you very much for your feedback, Mina.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, just in addition to what Goska said, is that this is definitely an area that your feedback on this, I think, is a really important thing that we need to take into consideration as we look to try and improve the services that our estate residents in terms of parking are able to access. There's historically always been quite a big difference between how our estates are managed and how on street are managed, and that's one of the main themes we're looking to try and address through this parking enforcement plan. I think to be very honest, the long-term challenge has been on our estates. We've got very finite parking space, as you know, as you'll be well aware, and we're at or around capacity on about between a third and half of those estates. So we need to find the best way to ensure that we can manage the maximum capacity of how many permit holders we've got on any estate, while still ensuring that, you know, particularly obviously the blue badges, which, you know, are very valuable and which we want to minimise people having to display them when they're parked outside their own homes, to find the best way to accommodate that. So it's certainly something that we'll take away, and do please, if you haven't done so already, give us your feedback in your response to the consultation, and we can look in that in some more detail.
I definitely will do. Thank you, Michael, and thank you,
you.
Kosika, as well, for your help. Thank you.
Thank you so much, for your questions. And we're going to go ahead. I'm going to allow Anthony to ask your questions. I'm unmuting you now. And just please go ahead. I think you're unmuted. Yeah, please go ahead.
Thanks very much. Michael, thanks very much for your response to my earlier question too. I'd just like to come back to the point on electric charging points. It's fantastic that there are plans to put another 2,000 electric charging points in. It's very much going to help people move in the right direction to electric vehicles from petrol vehicles. Just a thought, I don't know what the numbers are in the borough in terms of the number of cars that park, and what your forecasts are, because presumably you have some forecasts for the number of cars there will be and the number of electric vehicles there will be over the next, let's say, 5 years. But I would just sort of encourage you, I mean, I'm sure this is part of the thinking, to really be thinking about whatever those forecasts are for electric cars. Every one of those cars is going to need to be charged at some point, and there's going to need to be, you know, an appropriate number of electric charging points. I don't know what the number is. I'm sure you do, and I'm sure that is part of the thinking, but I just throw that thought in as part of the long-term planning.
Thank you, Anthony.
Hi, Anthony. Thank you very much for your feedback, and that's something that we are taking into consideration. It's our street scene service that's leading on this, but I am working with them in terms of electric charging from the parking policy perspective. And one of the things that's really key for us is to ensure that we've got enough residential electric charging points, and also the right type of electric charging points in those bays. So it's not just the overnight and the trickle charge, it's also the fast and the rapid charge that can get you to a full battery within, you know, or half a battery within 30 minutes. So if we have those kind of electric charging points in place, it will help with that. And also what I mentioned earlier about having those maximum stays in place where people cannot be in there and use that space as a parking bay. They will need to turn it around, and once they've finished charging their vehicle, somebody else can go in. If we have all those things connecting, then it will hopefully allow those 2,000 spaces that we're going to be 2,000 charging points that we're going to be putting in. It will allow full access to those people that need it, and having them in the right spaces as well.
Thanks. It's good to know all the thinking's going into this. It's much appreciated. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anthony. Is there any other comments? No. All right, I'm going to just go ahead, Anthony. I'm gonna mute you now, and I'm gonna have Leslie ask a question. Leslie, I'm unmuting you right now. I think you just need to unmute yourself. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you very much for your presentation and all your responses as well, which I think have been very positive. A couple of points I'd like to make and be reassured about is that I am a peripatetic visitor to clients within the borough, and I do find it quite difficult to get around and also to find appropriate parking. So I would be interested in knowing if you have any particular plans for passes or anything of that nature for people who are peripatetic and who need to park in various places because they are visiting their clients. And secondly, you did mention other sustainable transport, and I was just wondering what you meant by other sustainable transport. For those of us who can't manage bicycles and public transport is too long-winded to get around. Hope that makes sense.
Thank you so much, Leslie. I'm just going to allow the panelists to answer your questions.
Hi, Leslie. I didn't quite catch what it was that your work is that you're carrying out across the borough, which would just help me in answering your question.
Yeah, I visit various houses in order to see clients.
Okay. So for people who undertake work within the borough, we've got a range of different offers. So if your work is exclusively within the borough, we have something called the All Zone permit, which is often used by very localised organisations. So, for example, estate agents, which enables people to park in different zones across the borough, and they can park in a range of different bay types. We've also got our Ringo service, which is the cashless parking, which enables people to park in a range of different locations all across the borough. We do also provide a business permit, which enables people to park their business vehicle close to their registered premises, which is primarily used by organisations where there's an essential need, and by that we mean primarily for carrying goods. So whether it be a van operating for a local convenience store that needs to make trips to and from cash and carries, etc. That's what we'll typically use that for. We don't provide that as a permit for people that may be attending meetings within Hackney or beyond, and the council's got a very clear commitment to ensure we're not supporting commuting in any way, because obviously we've got a real desire to try and reduce the level of vehicles we've got within Hackney. So it's very much based around the use of what that vehicle is required for in terms of the work that you're carrying out. So hopefully that gives some sense of what's available. We've got web pages on our council website that can give you further details on eligibility if you want to look into that in more detail.
Okay, thank you. It's as a carer actually that I would be visiting, so it's not so much as a business; it's more of visiting patients.
Okay. Well,
okay, and the other thing about sustainable transport, what would you consider to be sustainable transport other than the bicycle and two legs?
So there's a wide range of different types of sustainable transport. So that obviously includes public transport, walking, cycling, sort of the most common examples. Just to go back to a point in terms of caring, one of the things that I think Goska did touch on in her presentation earlier is that we are looking to change the one of our permit types, which is currently called the Health and Social Care Permit, to provide something that is designed to help support people who are in our communities day in, day out, supporting residents in their own homes with what's called a community support permit. So supporting those who often are carrying quite heavy equipment, whether it be community midwives, people supporting people in adult social care, helping people to maintain and promote their independence. And we want to take a more of a needs-based approach to deciding whether or not we can help support people with parking permits, working in very valuable roles which play a huge amount in helping our local residents and expanding the eligibility. I think built a lot on what we saw during the pandemic in terms of the range of organisations that were out there day in, day out supporting people through what's been such a challenging 18 months and ensuring that we're in lockstep with that.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Sorry, I lost you completely there. Okay. And can I just also mention the Blue Badge scheme? It was really nice to hear someone else asking about that, but it's very difficult to get.
I think I can't really hear Leslie. I think yes. Can you hear Leslie, or is it just me? Hello, Leslie?
I think.
Hello. Yeah, you froze again.
Yeah, I think it cut off. If you want to just go ahead and repeat your question.
Oh, it was about the Blue Badge system. How that's quite difficult to actually get a Blue Badge, even if you're quite disabled. Are there going to be any ways of making that more quicker and more efficient in the future?
Thank you, Leslie. Jessica?
Hi, Leslie. Thank you for your question. The Blue Badge scheme is actually run nationally. So in terms of the process, parking services will not be responsible for people who do or don't get them. That process is dealt with by a different service in the team, in Hackney, sorry. So in respect of that, that's something that we wouldn't be able to change or implement. The only thing I will say in terms of the Blue Badge scheme is that we are opening up our bays, our permit holder bays, to all Blue Badge holders to give them more accessibility to park across Hackney. So that's something, that's in addition to all the spaces that they can currently park, which are single use and single and double yellow lines where no further restriction applies, shared use displays and paying display bays for unlimited time. So in addition to those spaces, we will open up permit holder only bays for all Blue Badge holders. So that's from a parking perspective and how we're helping support our Blue Badge residents and people with disabilities. But in terms of the actual process itself, we do not have anything that we can do to expedite that change. And if you are experiencing problems with regards to that, there should be somewhere online where you'll be able to get that information. We do have our disabled team in Hackney that will be able to help you with regards to that, and hopefully we can put that in the chat where you can get some more feedback or be able to email someone and get if you haven't received your Blue Badge when you've applied. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I have someone else. I have Damien. Damien has been waiting patiently. Damien, I'm just going to go ahead and mute you. Leslie, if you have a follow-up question, you can raise your hand again and I will allow you another turn. And Damien, I have unmuted you. If you want to go ahead after Damien, what we're going to do is we're going to go to the Q&A function because there's a few questions that have been posted there, and then we'll go back to the verbal questions. So Damien, over to you.
Cool. I've got two questions. I'll do the quick one first. And the proposal for market traders permit, will they be using the business parking bays, or the plan to allow them to park anywhere?
Thank you for your questions. Gosika, go ahead.
Hi, Damien, and thank you for your question. The proposal in terms of exactly where they're going to park has not been defined as of yet. I think it all depends on the market, the bays that are available. It's likely to be permit bays, but like I said, it's not been defined. At the moment, we're just looking at whether or not it's a good idea to introduce a market trader permit.
Well, the other one, you've spoken about it a bit, is around the community support permit. I live very close to Homerton Hospital, and we got parking in a number of years ago because it was impossible for anybody to park anywhere near the hospital due to the amount of people that were commuting to the hospital. Quite rightly, during the pandemic, permits were given out to the workers at the hospital, and it was the area was swamped for commuters coming in. It was interesting during August to see just how much space there was when there was people on holiday from the hospital. It's quite concerning that the availability for the Blue Badge holders to park in more bays around the hospital, and just the ease that it will be for people to now drive continually to the hospital from afar, clogging up our streets. It's not the parking so much, but it's the vehicles that are driving in. And on our road, two mothers had concerns for I was going to say CO2, but that's not the nasty one. Carbon monoxide levels on the street due to the pollution that we've got, and I'm really concerned about more vehicles coming into the area long term, and Hackney effectively supporting people to commute to these places. I've put in a request to see. I think we're a particular case. I know everyone thinks they're special. I don't think I'm special, but I think the fact that we're near a hospital, we're quite special. To talk to us, to put our minds at rest and really explain what modelling's been done and how you think that it might pan out in the local area.
Thank you for that feedback. It's a good point, and it's one that we have taken into consideration because obviously, like you said, around the hospital, we do, it's about trying to balance the needs of the people that live in that area to the needs of the people that are going there to visit people who are sick or going there because they need to be admitted or whatever the reason might be. So from our perspective, we are opening up permit holder bays. Resident bays will still be protected in respect of just for the people that live there, and depending on the location of the parking zone. So for instance, around Homerton Hospital, there might be more resident bays than there are permit bays to try and balance it out. But one of the things that we will be doing, if this proposal is accepted, is that we will be looking at the needs of both the people that live there and the people that are visiting and the people that are working in that area, and trying to balance it so it's fair for everyone. We're not going to have a blanket rule where it's all bays and all people with blue badge all people who have a blue badge can go to that area and park, because the people that live there won't ever be able to park outside of their homes. We need to find a balance, and by allowing permit holder bay only and reserving the resident bays, this will allow us to do that. And just to put it into some sort of context, there are something like, I think it's 11,000 permit holder bays and about an equal amount of resident bays, but that can be moved up or down.
Oscar, it's an issue now. We have an issue now with workers from the hospital driving up on friends and families blue badges and going off to work, and we have issues with vouchers being used for people to go to commute in. It's an ongoing thing. I think now's the time for you to engage with the residents at a local level to see if we can get it sorted before this comes in.
That's a very good point.
It's been raised, but nothing's been done, and I just think that on the whole, I support the plans, and I get it, but I think we're going to be disproportionately affected when we've already got an issue, and nobody seems to be dealing with the current issue.
One of our other plans that we are putting forward is demand-led enforcement, and that's going to be tackling where there are issues of non-compliance. So what you've raised and what you've described to me, if it's an ongoing problem, our enforcement team will be aware of that. And that's something that they can take into consideration to ensure that only the people that have who have the right to use those blue badges are using them. I did say in the presentation that one of the things that we were going to do is look into IT checks for blue badges and step those up so that we know that the people that are supposed to be using them are using them. And if they are not using the blue badge, they will get their blue badge removed. Or cancelled, and the same with companion badges if they are a Hackney resident. So these are the things that we're putting into place as preventative measures to stop people who should not be using those badges. Those services are there for the people that need them, not for people to commute into Hackney.
Great. So would somebody from parking take the time to deal with the issues that we've got now before it becomes worse?
From our perspective, you can actually email our enforcement team to let them know of any issues that you're experiencing now.
That's not what I'm asking. This is a historical ongoing issue, and I think we deserve someone to actually sit down with us and go through and come up with some solutions.
Happy to do that.
It's not a reactive thing.
Sure. If you leave your details, one of my team in the chat will contact you, but we're happy to listen to your concerns on a more one-on-one level and not in this forum. So yeah, happy to.
Thanks. When you say leave details, do you want me to
email
them to you?
Email address to email your details to.
Thank you so much. Somebody will message you privately, Damien, to just get your details. Thank you so much, Damien. So what we're gonna do now, before I let more people, participants ask their questions verbally, is that we're gonna go to the Q&A questions, because we have a few. So I'm gonna just go over to you, Sarah.
Okay, thank you, Mariana. We do have a question, and it's, please can you define what is considered a low emission vehicle and the associated charge?
Thank you, Sarah. Go ahead, Michael.
A low emission vehicle will be an electric vehicle, or it will be a hybrid vehicle. For electric vehicles, we're proposing free parking permits in this parking enforcement plan. And for the next one up, it's about £17 and so on. So we can put a link into the chat for the parking permit prices. They are in our booklet, our consultation booklet. They're all outlined there as well. So you can have a look there and you can see. But off the top of my head, I couldn't give you that unless you're asking me for residence permit, and I do have that to hand.
Just to add to that, as a broad rule of thumb, for any vehicles which are emitting less than 130 grams per kilometre of CO2, permit prices will go down. Obviously, it's a sliding scale, and for vehicles which are above that level, they will either remain broadly the same or see an increased permit price as the CO2 emissions rise. And also for diesel vehicles, they will see increasing prices as we look to try and dissuade people from having diesel vehicles in Hackney due to the impact they have on localised air quality.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I think we have a couple more questions, so I'm just going to go over to you.
Yes, we have a question from Min. How will Hackney address displacement of traffic to other residential roads caused by the closure of roads that are being trialled? Other residents' streets are now being polluted from the traffic in place. The main roads are being used, are always stressed, and more pollution is being caused by this.
Thank you so much, Sarah, and I'm just going to let the panelists address that.
So just to say on that, as I mentioned earlier on, I think when I was answering, I think it was Tony's question at the beginning of today's session, if you're being impacted upon by obviously schemes which are being introduced in your area, please do take part in the consultation around low traffic neighbourhoods, either for that specific scheme or give your feedback more widely, so that our street scene colleagues can take on board everyone's feedback about the impact that the changes in the way our roads are managed is having on you and your street.
Thank you so much, Michael, for your answer. We have another question here, Sarah.
This question's from Kylie. I'm interested in the cost to Hackney Council per year to administer a parking permit. If electric vehicles are not charged for parking, then any cost for admin will be absorbed, I assume.
Thank you so much, Michael. So the answer to that, Carl, is I don't have a per application figure to hand. Obviously, there is some time involved in terms of officer approval of our permit applications. Let's say the overall aim is to ensure that we've got a sufficiently broad pricing structure to incentivise those who are driving the most polluting vehicles to go as green as they possibly can, and to also consider giving up their vehicle if it's something they're using infrequently. And actually, the major investments we've made in cycle parking infrastructure, in improving cycle, the cycle routes we've got within the borough, and the public transport improvements we've seen over the last 10 years actually don't provide a better way for people to be able to move in and around the borough. And obviously, the changes we've seen over the pandemic, increased working from home, etc., we hope we'll also see some changes in how people travel within the borough and lead to a reduction in vehicle usage overall.
Thank you so much. So right now we have a couple more questions in the Q&A, and then we're going to go back to asking verbal questions. Sarah?
A question from Min. Will permit holder bays also be open to all blue badge holders on estates too?
I'll answer that. Yeah, so on estates, it's got to be done on a case-by-case basis, and that's because not all estates have enough parking for the people that live there to be able to say that we can just put a blanket policy across all parking, all Hackney housing estates. So it would need to be on a case-by-case basis. So that's the answer to that.
Thank you so much. And the last question for the Q&A, Sarah?
So Shafiqul asked, Homerton issue is good. Could you please find some dedicated non-residential place for essential hospital staff, please?
So I'm happy to take that one. In terms of what we're doing with the Homerton Hospital, we've worked with them on their sustainable transport plan a few years back. There is quite a bit of parking actually within the hospital estate already, and they have a plan which helps them prioritise how those spaces are made available to people who work at the Homerton Hospital. For Hackney Council, obviously, I think Damien highlighted obviously the challenges that people who work at the hospital, parking in the streets immediately around there has been having for residents who live there. And so we need to strike a balance that that works and doesn't incentivize people in the long term to be travelling in and commuting to park close to the hospital. And the way that we're proposing to do that is through the community support permit. So helping, in effect, those people who may work for the hospital, may work for other social care organisations or charities and third sector partners whose work is primarily community based. So I talked about community midwives. There are other people who similarly have community based roles. We will work with those individuals to support them in being able to carry out their duties effectively as they can. But for commuting parking, we won't be providing that for Homerton Hospital staff in the same way that we don't provide commuter parking for Hackney Council staff or other organisations within Hackney, because we're well served by public transport. There's ample opportunities for people to travel in by train, bus, or other modes of transport, and so we're very clear that that's not something that will be provided during the course of this parking enforcement plan.
Thank you so much, Michael. So we're gonna go ahead. I have a couple of participants that have raised their hands, and EC, I don't know how to pronounce your name actually, so I apologize if I'm not doing it right. I'm unmuting you. So I just think you need to unmute yourself. And then after that, we're gonna go to Sylvia. So over to you. I think you're unmuted now.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Hi, sorry. I guess I've got two kind of points really. I think, I've been a resident for about 39 years, my whole life. And what I've noticed over time is that I guess the smaller people, the people that maybe don't, I guess, how can I put this? The people that don't really have too much of a voice, they tend to get overlooked. And that has become more and more prevalent over the years. For example, now I feel as though we are kind of tackling the emissions issue and so on in a way that, say the people online now who are part of this call, we probably tend to come from quite similar sort of background and upbringings. There are some people that I know who live in the borough who won't be on a call like this, who, maybe the car that they've got is the only thing that they could afford, which happens to be, not the best in terms of pollution. If they could get something that, wasn't polluting, I'm pretty sure they would do it. So I think, so what I'm ultimately saying is that, a lot of what we're talking about today assumes that, we're all coming from the same place and we can all, the options are available and we can all do them if pushed, if just gently eased into that. And I don't think that that's something that we're doing enough of, quite frankly. That's just a sort of a general point, because I think that does tend to happen when decisions are being made. We tend to talk to the people who can talk back to us, and the people who don't talk back to us, we kind of just push them to the side and assume that they're okay. So my other point was going to be that for myself, for example, I work in the public sector also, and I also have my own business. I'm a freelancer. So a lot of my equipment I keep at home. And when I'm going to do my jobs, they could take a day, they could take a couple of hours, they could take a longer period of time. So for example, the car club stuff doesn't work for me. Taking public transport doesn't work for me. Walking obviously doesn't work for me. Cycling doesn't work for me. I know, Michael, you mentioned earlier that, there are other, I think, I can't remember the lady's name who asked you about the other forms of transportation, but you couldn't answer that. And I understand why you couldn't answer that, because there aren't many other options besides what you've mentioned. So for me, for example, everything that you're kind of proposing inconveniences me in such a way that, I'm now considering myself actually leaving the borough, because, it's just not sustainable for me. If I could say, for example, I understand I'm a freelancer, but as well as, what I do, but even with all of that income, it's still not enough, do you understand, to feasibly make the changes within the timescale that you guys are proposing, for example. There's no support from the council. There's just, this is what's going to change. This is what's going to happen. These are the charges, get on with it, So really and truly, I just think that there needs to be a better way of including people or capturing people who maybe aren't able to come onto these onto these web calls or whatever you want to call them, people who, you know, are just pretty much at work now. You know, they don't have an option of doing this and they're struggling, pardon me. So those are kind of my points. And I'm not sure what I would do as somebody who at this moment in time has a petrol car, would love to move to an electric car, but it's just not feasible yet for me. And, you know, as I said, I carry a large amount of equipment. You know, I work in media. So, you know, carrying cameras, rigs, tripods, you know, audio equipment, you know, sometimes I have to carry people with me because I don't do the work by myself, for example. And I could go to a job that could last me 2 hours, it could last me 10 hours. How do I now deal with that as a, you know, a means of getting around anymore? Do I have to change my job? Do I have to leave the borough? I don't want to, but it just feels like that's kind of where I'm being pushed.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to allow the panelists to sort of answer and comment on your queries. Michael Gosica, over to you.
So, Izzy, I really welcome your feedback today, and I think you've raised some really pertinent points. In terms of the consultation process we're undertaking, I couldn't agree more with you that obviously the way we communicate with our residents, the times we hold sessions, the way we do them, obviously this particular one is online, has a bearing on, you know, who actually is able to join us, and that's why this consultation has had sessions which have been delivered. We've got sessions we've delivered at the town hall in the evening, we've got evening sessions, we've got online sessions, we've communicated it extremely widely through various different media channels, both traditional, so newspapers, through to online, Twitter, etc. So our desire here is to try and have a conversation with as many people across Hackney as we possibly can. And it's precisely because of what you've described that we're doing these in a whole variety of different ways, different times of day, different approaches to try and maximise the input of different people's voices so that everyone has an opportunity to be heard through this consultation. In terms of your work and your feelings about the direction of travel and its impact upon you, I think from my perspective it's really important to stress that nothing we're proposing within this parking and enforcement plan is designed around preventing people who've got, you know, very legitimate reasons why they need to use a car to go about their business from doing so. We're not banning cars, we're not stopping people from using their cars, we're just simply trying to make sure that for people who want to be able to make a greener choice, that it is, you know, it's in their interest to be able to do so and to make it that bit easier for people to make a greener step forward. And that doesn't necessarily always mean going straight from a petrol vehicle all the way to electric, as much as we would, you know, like that to be the case where people, you know, can do so and it works for them. But for people when they are thinking about changing a vehicle, to consider the greenest possible vehicle that they can, and for us to play a supportive role in making that a reality. Because, you know, we have got, you know, no bones about it, in Hackney we've got amongst the poorest air quality anywhere within the UK, and it's something that has an impact on the life chances of, you know, of people up and down the borough every single day. It leads to high levels of asthma. We've got, you know, around 70 people a year end up dying prematurely as a result of poor air quality. So it's something that councillors are very determined to see the borough as a whole address, and that's where, you know, what we're trying to achieve through the proposals we've set out. But, you know, we equally recognise that it's a long-term journey that we're on here, and we need to be supporting and certainly not preventing people who need access to their cars to be able to do so in the way that you've described. So it's certainly not our intention to go down that route, and we'll be very careful to not do so in terms of the proposals we've set out.
Am I still unmuted? I'm not sure, sorry. I really appreciate your response, Michael, and I don't want to come across too challenging, but there's nothing in what you've said that I can take anything away from, because you've just said it's not your intention to inconvenience me, but you are. It's not your intention to, you know, not capture people who can't come onto these calls, but everything that you're using, all of the tools that you're using are still going to exclude those people. For example, my mum lives in Hackney. My mum will not come onto one of these calls. My mum will probably be at work during the times that you're talking about being at the town hall. And at the same time, even if she was on this call, she'd probably be too scared to even say anything. Do you get what I'm saying? And those are the people who get forgotten. Those are the people who actually need, you know, how can I say this? Like quality answers, something that actually tangible answers that they can take away and say, okay, if this happens, if this consultation happens and everything goes ahead, I'm not going to be overlooked. I'm not going to have to think about, okay, what am I going to do now? I'm going to panic. And you've mentioned again, you said something about, you know, the next choice you make should be a greener option. As I mentioned before, if people could afford it, they would do it immediately. But the point is that they can't. And unfortunately, the people who are arranging this, who are making all of these decisions, yeah, are the people who probably can afford it, probably don't even live in the borough, probably don't have to deal with the things that you're implementing. You're just trying to, in a way, kind of tick boxes. The government says we need to do this by this by this. Okay, let's jump in and let's put these things into place because, you know, we need to, you know, bring our emissions down. If people could do these things reasonably, they would. If people could get some support from the people who are asking these things to happen, they would love it. But it doesn't happen. We just get these things pushed through the post saying, these are the new charges. If you have a car, this is what's happening. If you live in this area, we're going to put a low traffic neighborhood around. Nobody's ever asked me about low traffic neighborhoods personally. No one's put anything through my letterbox. And I've got low traffic neighborhoods all around me. And this is, and I think I'm just trying to address, I think ultimately what I'm trying to address is just the way that things are being done. It's being done in a way that, in a way, just looks at the middle class up. It doesn't look at people below that line. It's just not fair. You know, it's not fair. You're doing a lot. I'm not saying you're not doing good things. I'm really not saying that. And I hope that doesn't come across by the way I'm speaking. But I just think a lot more can be done, but you just need to be more inclusive. And the way to be more inclusive is to include those people who aren't getting a voice. That's all. I'll say no more, sorry.
That's okay. Thank you so much for that feedback. Michael, I see you wanna.
No, I would say that Izzy, you know, I think your perspective is a really important one, and you know, it's vital that these sessions. I do come back to that. You know, we have got sessions across a wide range of media at different times of the day. So you know, we were at a session only last week in the evening, ran from 7 till 9 at the town hall, where we had 50, 60 people turn up who had a very different perspective from some of the online calls that we've had. And we've got another one of those we'll be holding in November, which will be advertising shortly, because we know there is a demand for those kind of sessions to be held outside of working hours, because you're absolutely right, people have got commitments at different times of the day. And so, you know, we're not trying to shy away from, in fact, we're actively trying to have a conversation with as many people as we can, and we're leaving no stone unturned to ensure that we can hear as many different perspectives on the challenges we've got in Hackney, how to address them, the impacts that the proposals may have on different people, whether people feel they're going far enough or too far, and who's maybe not being considered as much as something we think we need to be thinking about, whether it's around affordability, access to infrastructure, etc. So I'd encourage you, your mum, anyone else who wants to engage with this, to take part in one of these sessions and to give you feedback, because collectively it'll help make sure these proposals really reflect the different challenges we've got in Hackney from the perspective of residents, and that we have the strongest plans to take forward as a result.
Thank you so much, Michael. I'll go ahead, Koska.
No, I was just going to add to that, you know, one of the things that we, you know, it's really important for us to get the feedback from residents. I'm a resident myself, and it's really important that, you know, we understand everybody's point of view. And one of the things that we are trying to do as part of this parking enforcement plan is do a focus group to test the results. So once we've got all the feedback from everybody, we've reviewed it, and we've come up with solutions to that feedback and the proposals, and that analysed it all, we want to take that to a focus group. So if you'd like to join that focus group, I would basically mention that in the chat, and one of my team will tell you how you can do that.
Thank you so much, Koska. We have two more participants. I'm just going to allow them to ask the questions, and then we'll need to wrap up, as the session has gone a little bit over the time that has been expected. But I have Sylvia. Sylvia, I'm going to allow you to ask your question verbally. So I think I've unmuted you. I think you also added a few questions in the Q&A, so if you want to address them as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mariana. And it's not by coincidence. Following up Easy. Easy, thanks for representing the many of us. You did well. I'm going to contribute more of what he has said. It's by coincidence. I had this already on my paper list as well. And one of it I've raised already in the chat room. It's about the improving of the air quality. I gave alternatives or options if that was the motive, if it's not money making. At the moment, I'm home. I'm covered up, wrapped up with shawls and blankets because I can hardly even afford the heating during the day or off-peak hours. That's how struggling I am. Currently having a 2013 plate diesel. This was given to me by a number of friends in 2018 when I was going through my cancer treatment, as I needed a very supportive vehicle that would warm up my back myself. And today I find this being non-compliant with the ERAs being implemented. This in a way has hit many of us, as the scheme hasn't looked at the struggling and the poor and the vulnerable. When I spoke to my counselor last week, Claire Joseph, I asked about how the ULAs thing worked, especially with the residents, as myself, as I'm affected. And I was surprised. She also referred to the website, as not so much information has been given to them either. And when I asked if this could still affect myself when I'm parked, this information wasn't given. So much information that is needed is being left out, and you have to consult with the TfL directly, of which as well, this information they do not have. I had to speak to multiple people from them until I found out that this could affect me every when I drive in the borough, but not when I'm parked. So you will still consult with my chat, because I don't want to take so much time going through that again. So I'm going to get back to the inclusiveness of the services Hackney Council gives, as well as the parking. When we look at disability, it's not just the physical disability we look at here. You have talked about the blue badge. When we talk about the blue badge, it's not the physical blue badge I attain, but how I attain it. I find that communication within the services has excluded the disabled, the neurodiverse. Not every individual can read emails. Most of us communicate better by phone calls, talking, texts, post, reading a letter. But Hacking has based its services so much on E. We know it's all about money saving and talking about green, but you shouldn't forget that we're not the same. We don't choose to be this. You have to find the best mode of communication that we prefer to get all this information. So as I sum up my point of a blue badge, I was supposed to renew my blue badge in March this year. Because I struggle with online forms, I requested the Hacking Council sends me a hard copy, which I'm yet to receive. That was I made my last request on the 9th of June this year, and I'm still yet to receive this hard copy. I did mention this to my counsellor last week, as it was so annoying. And again, with the URAs, Hacking Council hasn't supported its residents. I find this as being a general thing that all boroughs have done. We haven't received any consultations. Otherwise, had we, you could have known how best we needed to be supported. We don't decline the air purifying. We all benefit from it health-wise. But rather than hitting us hard, with more expenses, I believe there would be more suitable, cheaper alternatives. I did mention about the literate. That's when they do not tamper with the engine, but they can change my vehicle from a Euro 5 to a Euro 6. I read from the website about emission test centers. You can hardly find any in the whole of UK. I have looked around and all I could see is motorcycle test centers. This service is being given in Germany. The Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, did introduce this scheme, the scrappage scheme that gives £2,000. Had they invested that 2,000 in test centers, I guess this could have benefited many of us. We look at Euro 6 vehicles whereby a vehicle can just pass by you and it's so dirty. I think it's not all about the year or the make of the car. It's about the service. It's about how someone takes care of their vehicle. To me, this is money making, and it's going to leave many of us on our knees. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. I'm just going to allow the panelists to address your queries.
Hi, Sylvia. Thank you for your feedback, and I do hope you're feeling much better now following your illness that you mentioned when you were speaking. With regards to the ULEZ scheme, it is a TfL scheme, and what we did as a council to just inform people of that scheme is that we did put our own communications on our website to ensure that residents were aware that this was coming. So that's one of the things that we wanted to make sure our residents in our borough were informed of these changes, and we put different things that you could do in place of your vehicle, and one of my team will put that in the chat so you can see the information that we put up on our streets with regards to the ULEV. I understand from your feedback that the information that TfL have put through has not been quite clear, and I do apologise for that. You know, it's not the council that's doing that, but I do sympathise with the fact that, you know, people that are trying to find the information that they want are not getting it. So I am really sorry about that, but from our perspective, we will look to make our information on our website a little bit stronger. So what is lacking from TfL, we can probably, hopefully, if there is information that you would like to see and it's not on the TfL website, we can hopefully fill those gaps in on our web pages. In terms of inclusiveness and in communicating that information back to our residents in terms of the consultation itself, we have tried, like Michael did say, different modes of communication, because we do accept that not everybody is online. And one of the things we took into consideration was how people apply to us when they are renewing their permits. So if you renewed online, you got an email through the post, through your mailbox in terms of the consultation taking place. But if you renewed your permit via the post, you got the consultation booklet and questionnaire sent to you. And that's one of the things that we wanted to make key, because you weren't going to get the information any other way if you don't use online information to renew your permits in the first instance. So we made sure we bridged that gap into ensuring that those that applied by post for their permits got the feedback and the consultation the same way too. So, you know, I can only say that in terms of the blue badge scheme and the information that you said around not getting the postal application, that hasn't happened. I can only apologise that they haven't done that. If you can email parking.policy@hackney.gov.uk, we will ensure that something is sent out to you. If you just send us your address, we will ensure that is sent out to you as soon as possible. And I can only apologise that hasn't happened up until now. The scrappage scheme that you mentioned as well, and in terms of Euro 6 and the changeover, you know, again, that's a government led scheme, so I don't really have all the information as to how it works and who's eligible and who's not. But again, one of my team will put that on the web page in terms of where you can find that more information for that. For the Euro 6 and not being able to find a test centre, you know, I would imagine that other people are doing the same thing, trying to look for the same way of trying to get their vehicle Euro compliant. And I can only imagine that there's only a certain amount that can do that in the whole of the UK. And I don't understand why that hasn't happened for you. But unfortunately, again, from my perspective, That's something that we don't deal with directly, so I can't really advise you as to what to do there. I hope I've answered your question, Michael. Is there anything that you'd like to add?
No, I think you've answered all those points.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. I have Kim raising its hand. Kim, raising your hand. I'm going to allow you to talk, and I think that after this we'll probably have to wrap up as we've gone a little bit over the time intended for this session. So Kim, I am unmuting you.
Hi, thanks for your time. I'm just talking for the ordinary family. So I have 3 children, and my husband and I work full time, and we really support reducing the pollution levels in Hackney because we don't want our children having asthma and breathing problems. However, having a car for us is also really important as well when you've got to pick up children from nursery, play centre, they've got activities. It would just be impossible for us to work full time, pick up the children, do activities, get home in time to have dinner, put the children to bed without the use of a car. And as much as we do like to walk and cycle as much as we can, it would just not be practical for us to be able to do that, to be able to achieve all the things that we want to do. And, you know, I know that you're making concessions for people who own businesses or carers and disabled people, which I completely support as well. But sometimes I feel like the ordinary families are just, you know, who do support a healthy environment, they're not being considered either, because what I've been noticing is that the car journeys we make are actually taking us longer to do, which can't be helping the environment. And I do support the road closure scheme, but what I'm concerned about is how this is being managed strategically to ensure that, you know, over a period of time, that it's not actually making more issues in the sense of longer journey times, or creating more traffic. You know, is there some kind of time scale in place for it to be reviewed to see, well, maybe this road should be closed and not that road, or maybe different times for these things, for different, you know, maybe the different times the roads should be closed and things like that. And we're happy to buy a new car when we can afford to, a hybrid car or electric car as well. It's just not something we can afford right now. But yeah, unfortunately, because we're not business people, or, you know, we don't necessarily need our car for work. It's more just so we can manage our family life from time to time. I just want to know, like, if we've been considered.
Thank you so much, Kim. I'll just allow one of the panelists to answer your question.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. Appreciate your question. And it's a really important point. And I will say very directly, residents like you have absolutely been considered in the development of these plans. So I said earlier on, in terms of what permit prices would be looking like for resident permits, that mid to low range in terms of emissions vehicles, so 130 grams per kilometre or under, will see their permit price go down. For those that are sort of typically mid-range vehicles at the moment, they may go up slightly, but we are any pricing changes that will happen are going to be phased in over a 5-year period. And I think it's really important to stress this point, because fully recognise it is not the case for many, you know, households at all that they're, you know, in a position to be able to afford to change one vehicle to another in the imminent future. One of the things I think Gosca mentioned earlier on was about trying over the next 5 years to set out the direction of travel, to be very open and transparent with people about what's going to be happening in terms of permit prices, diesel surcharges, or any other changes in pricing, so that people can make an informed decision about what works best for them and their personal circumstances. So, you know, for you, Kim, you know, you need to continue to have a vehicle for the reasons you explained. That's absolutely fine, and permits will still be available to residents like you to be able to do so. The pricing will gradually change over time, and we will be sharing that information as we have done through this consultation with everyone, so that everyone can make informed decisions about whether they want to stick with the vehicle they've got at the moment, or if they are considering making a shift, they can do so fully in the knowledge of what that may mean in terms of their permit price over the next 5 years. And it's important to say that the price of a on-street resident permit is hugely below the cost of renting other off-street parking, which is available within Hackney. And I checked a couple of days ago, and we've got permit space or private parking spaces available for rental for anywhere from 150 to 200 pounds per month, which shows obviously the level of demand there is for people to be able to drive in and park. And we're trying to strike the right balance in ensuring that for those who need to be able to drive and have a car, that it's not made unaffordable, whilst at the same time having the right pricing structure and incentives in place to help people to, where they are making a choice, transition to the greenest possible vehicle or mode of transport that they can. So absolutely, we are considering residents like you, and the 30,000 others who've got resident permits within the borough as part of this decision-making process. And I think the points you raised are ones that are really important to discuss and for us to bear in mind.
Thank you. And I just wanted to also check, is there a review period of road closures to see which ones are working the best for the borough and like travel times and traffic and things like that? Or is it just set in stone now?
No, so the schemes that were introduced, so the low traffic neighbourhoods were introduced as temporary schemes, and they've all had an ongoing consultation process in place on a scheme by scheme basis. And I think we had in the chat earlier on the link to that, so you can provide feedback, as well as obviously listening to what residents, businesses, other people affected by the changes have to say about specific schemes. We also have access to data from Transport for London. We work very closely with them to understand the impact of changes on our road network around journey times, etc. So all of that will play a part in our colleagues in Street Scene looking at the impact of the proposals, how well they're working, and what our residents and businesses have to say on the schemes we've got in place. So it's an ongoing conversation, and I'd encourage you, if you haven't taken part so far, Kim, to give your feedback on the scheme or schemes that are near to where you live.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Kim. Thank you so much, Michael. And we have come to the end of the session. Thank you, everyone, for participating. I think we've had really good points raised, great feedback. And again, if you haven't had the chance to fill out the consultation, we're going to be sending the link. We'll be posting the link here in the chat. And thank you again for joining us. Have a lovely day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you for joining. Bye.